Hello and welcome back to the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast. Today I have back on the show my good friend Karen Martel, who is a certified hormone specialist and transformational nutrition coach, distinguished authority in the realms of women's weight loss and hormonal health. As the esteemed host of the highly acclaimed women's health podcast, the Hormone Solution Podcast, Karen delves deeply into the intricacies of female fat loss and the complex world of hormones, arming women with the knowledge they require to seize control of their well-being. Would you like to get thicker, fuller, and stronger hair? Then make sure to check out fullyvital.com. The teams come up with fantastic and natural products that help rejuvenate your hair, but also delay and reverse gray hairs. So if you're interested in better hair, go to fullyvital.com and use the code anti-aging-hacks for 15% off your order. Are you enjoying the shows on this channel? Then please make sure to hit the subscribe button down below so you can get notified when we release new episodes. Our goal with this show is to help you and give you practical tips that you can use to slow down and reverse your aging so you can live and feel younger and live your best life. With that said, let's get on with the show. With that said, Karen, welcome to the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast.
Thank you for having me back. It's always a pleasure to come talk to you.
Always a pleasure to talk to you as well, and I get to learn so much every time I talk to you. So I have a lot of questions for you. We'll talk all about female hormones, and you've also launched a product recently, so I'm super excited to dive into it to find out how you came up with the idea, how you launched it, what it does, what are the benefits, and all the things that I'm sure everybody will want to know when they consider their product or your product. With that said, let's dive right in. We're going to talk about female hormones. So I'd love for you to share the history of female hormone therapy, especially the Women's Health Initiative that had some controversial findings in the early 2000s. So walk us through where we stand today as it relates to the data, the dangers, or the benefits of hormone replacement for women.
Because there's so much misinformation out there, still so prevalent right now, that I would say a good 70% of the population still fears hormone replacement therapy in general, or they're just like, they're not sure about it. And, all of so many doctors are also fearful of them and warning their patients not to take them and saying things like, oh, well, I'm not going to give you that. That's going to give you cancer. And, oh, I can't do that, but I'll put you on birth control pills and give you this antidepressant and I'll give you this, this, and this.
Right.
But God forbid you take hormones, because this all came out of the WHI study. But prior to the WHI study, hormones had been around for a while and had been extremely popular. And actually, when you look through history, which is kind of interesting, there's records of, I would say, bioidentical hormones way back in China, thousands of years ago. They used to inject the royalty of China, the emperors and empresses. That's how I say it. There was records that they would ingest the dried urine of young people to keep youthful. Which that makes sense that it would do that. That contains our hormones, because we pee out all these hormonal metabolites that if you ingested them, it would be considered what we say today as bioidentical hormones. But luckily we are not having to ingest pee anymore from young people. There's a different way of getting it now. But they've been around for that long. And then in the early 1900s, they developed hormone replacement therapy, and once again derived from urine, but from pregnant horses' urine. And this was known as Premarin. And in the 1950s, Premarin was the #1 most prescribed medication. Not just hormone replacement, #1 medication prescribed in America. So you can imagine, majority of women in North America they were taking in menopause Premarin. What they started to see was that women were having an overgrown uterine lining because they were only taking Premarin, which is just estrogen. And obviously it is not bioidentical to our own. And when I say bioidentical, we can also just use the word body identical. So, which is the exact same as what we make on the inside. So we do not, us and horses, we are not aligned. It is not bioidentical.
Yeah.
There's a lot more estrogens in horses than there are in humans. And so they acted on our estrogen receptors, and so they gave us a lot of relief from menopausal symptoms. But it being an estrogen is a growth hormone. It is what grows our uterine lining. Progesterone comes in the second half of the cycle and counteracts that growth, and then you have your period. So without progesterone, you can have uncontrolled growth in the uterus as well as in the breast tissue and other places. So they saw that women were getting this thick uterine lining causing problems. And so they were like, we need to come up with some sort of a progesterone to help counterbalance this. So they came up with something called Provera, and it was a fake synthetic chemically made progesterone that acted like our natural progesterone to an extent and helped to counterbalance this growth. Worked great for that. So then they decided we need to come up with a study to prove how amazing these hormones are. So then came in the WHI study, which was one of the largest study of its kind. They had several different arms of the study, but one arm of the study, the women didn't have a uterus. And the other arm of the study, the women did. So that side of the study, they used both the fake synthetic progestin with the Premarin. And then the women that didn't have a uterus, they were like, well, we don't need to protect the uterine lining. There is no uterus. So those women were only given Premarin. A couple of years into this, they started to see an increase in breast cancer rates, as well as heart attack and stroke. And so the study itself was actually pulled, and they stopped the study early and said to the world, hormone replacement therapy gives you breast cancer and increases your risk of heart attack and stroke. Period. End of story. Like no details. Basically, it was just like, this is going to kill you. Every doctor out there, get your female patients off of this medication. And it literally went from something like 65% of women were taking it down to 4% or something. Like it dropped significantly. And we have not recovered from that. There's still very low levels of women on hormone replacement therapy. And we have had a decade of, well, 2 decades now of women suffering, needlessly suffering, because they're too afraid, because of that study, to take specifically estrogen replacement therapy, thinking is going to cause them breast cancer. Well, just this year, there, and prior to this as well, but there was a brand new one that just came out, but they have done several reanalysis of the WHI study. And what the truth of the matter was, if the truth of the study was the arm of the study that the women were taking progestin and Premarin had the increased rate of breast cancer, and not by much. 1 extra woman out of every 1,000 increased. The arm of the study without women that had hysterectomies, who were just on Premarin, had a decrease in developing breast cancer by over, I think it was 24%. Not only that, 45% less chance of dying from reoccurrence of breast cancer. So the women that were taking horses estrogen alone, had a 24% reduction in developing breast cancer and had a 45% reduction in dying from breast cancer from reoccurrence. Did we hear about that? Did you know? Have you heard about that? No, nobody's heard about it. Have the doctors heard about this? Are they spreading the word now? Like, oh my God, we had it wrong. Actually, estrogen can help protect you from getting breast cancer. And it was the progestins that caused the increase.
Wow.
And just so your audience understands the magnitude of this, what do you think is in birth control pills?
Estrogens, right? Or progestins?
Progestins. And
Progestins.
fake estrogens as well. So they're not hormones, they're synthetic chemicals, but they're not, birth control has no Premarin in it, but it does have types of progestins in it. So the same drug, or in the same class of drugs that cause the increase in breast cancer, is what's in birth control pills. And yet we're handing out birth control pills like it's candy. Oh, your 14-year-old has acne? Oh, let's just quickly write her a birth control prescription. And oh, you can stay on that as long as you want.
Yeah. That's ridiculous.
That's not true.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It completely shuts down our hormones. They are endocrine disruptors, which means hormone disruptors. And they do cause problems, and they do increase your risk of breast cancer. And that's proven now. So we haven't recovered from this. Women still think if they take estrogen, it's going to give them breast cancer. It is their largest fear around hormone replacement therapy. I hear it every single day in our clinic. It's like, oh, well, isn't this going to cause breast cancer? Is this safe for me to be taking? And how much should I be taking? And, there's just so much misinformation. And my attitude is, we see that horses' estrogen is even better than no estrogen to help us in many ways, not just breast tissue. But why, if there's a God or whatever you want to believe in, but whoever created us, why would they give us a hormone in great abundance for half of our lifetime that was going to cause cancer? Right? Like estrogen is our most important hormone for women. When we lose it in midlife, it causes the most issues. So it causes everything. I mean, it increases your risk of cardiovascular disease immensely. They say that women that replace their estrogen in menopause can have up to a 45% reduction in developing cardiovascular disease. That's huge. Alzheimer's and dementia. We know that estrogen, the women that replace their estradiol for 6 years or longer in menopause can have up to a 75 to 80% reduction in developing Alzheimer's. It helps us to be insulin sensitive. So we see a lot less of type 2 diabetes being developed in menopause. I mean, the list goes on. So it's really safe to say from all of the research now that we have at our fingertips that actually estrogen replacement is very safe. And for most women, now there is going to be a small subset of women that shouldn't take estrogen, that if you have estrogen positive breast cancer or a history of it, no, you don't want to be on estrogen. But in most cases, women can safely take estrogen. And now we have bioidentical estrogen. So we don't even have to take the horse's estrogen anymore. It's still being prescribed. Yeah. But we don't have to take that. Now we have a much even safer way of taking estrogen therapy, which is through the skin, not orally. And we can talk about why, but we want to take it through the skin transdermally. And we don't have any increased risk of heart attack and stroke. It's when you take it orally that you do. And it's body identical. So it comes actually now from yams or soy. Both progesterone and estrogen and testosterone come from plants. And to me, that's just wild that Mother Nature has given us a plant that we can actually extract this chemical out of that is the exact same makeup as our hormones. That to me is wild.
Yeah, that is really wild. But
your body sees it as natural. It is. It's cool. I think it's so cool. It's like it's God's gift.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing so much detail on the Women's Health Initiative and all I don't want to say misinformation, but maybe not the correct understanding of what we should have learned from that study, and dispelling that to the mass media, but also to all the doctors, and then prescriptions for estrogen and hormone replacement therapy and women going or basically plummeting because of that. And so you obviously have a lot of knowledge in this on this topic, Karen. That is your whole podcast. You've been doing it for a while. But for people that haven't heard the last time you came on the show, give them like a couple of minutes background on how you got into hormone therapy and how you got so passionate about doing what you do now.
Mm-hmm. When I had my daughter in my early 30s, shortly after I had her, about a year in or so, I started having a lot of hormonal dysfunction, but I didn't know it at the time. I was rapidly gaining weight. I had really bad inflammation. I was having gut problems. I couldn't sleep. I was having severe insomnia, horrible PMS, migraines around my period that would last for sometimes 10 days straight. And it was just like one thing after another. And of course, gaining the weight was what was really bothering me the most. And so I was trying to exercise my way out of it. I was trying to change my diet. I was doing everything that everybody's telling you to do, counting calories, working out as like a CrossFit workout. And I just kept getting fatter and fatter and fatter. And I was miserable. And so the doctors, here's your antidepressant and here's your sleeping pill. We'll see you later.
Mm-hmm.
So finally I was getting so frustrated that I figured out, I'm like, I think this is hormonal somehow. And I went and had my hormones properly tested with a naturopath, and it came back that yes, I was, really deficient in progesterone, really high in estrogen. My cortisol had tanked, same with my other adrenal hormone, DHEA. And then later found out that also my thyroid had tanked. And so I was a hot mess.
Yeah.
And it took me figuring this out and figuring out the hormonal piece that finally got my body to let go of the weight. And it took time, but it finally did happen. I had to change everything. I had to quit working out like this. I was starving myself, which was like the worst thing I could do for the adrenals and the thyroid. So I had to like completely do this overhaul of everything that I had been doing, and instead started doing yoga and nourishing my system and watching the hormones and taking supplements. And sure enough, the weight started coming off. And I came out of that experience thinking, there's got to be more women like me who are doing everything right and are
Right.
still gaining weight. And because it's hormonal. And that set me on like the mission to kind of get, some more certifications. And I went and became a nutritionist. And I was working a lot around weight loss and weight loss resistance and hormonal weight loss resistance. And then in my 40s, my early 40s, I started going into menopause. And I'm like, what? Like, once
Mm-hmm.
again, doing everything right, but yet now I'm certified to be
Right.
doing it,
Yeah.
right? Here I am, the weight loss coach, weight loss
Mm-hmm.
resistance coach, dealing with all of these women that are suffering. And then it happens to me again. And I gained like 10, 15 pounds within a month. And it was like history repeating itself. I had all of these hormones. I was having hot flashes and night sweats and
Wow.
was an emotional disaster. I lost my sex drive. I'm like, really? Are you kidding me? Like, why is this happening?
Again, yeah.
But I see now, of course, like these things happen so that we can learn and then teach other people.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of the same judgments around hormones, and I had kind of thought like, oh, I'm going to hit menopause and it's going to be, 6 months of some hot flashes and maybe gain a few pounds, and then it's over and I'm going to lose my period and all's done. Like I had that in my head. And so that taught me that that is not what typically happens, that perimenopause itself typically starts in our mid 30s to late 30s and can last for like 10 to 12 years. And it's that time frame that tends to be the worst for women.
Mm,
Not
really?
once you actually
Okay.
get through into menopause. Yes, it can continue to happen. I mean, I've worked with women that are in their 70s that are still having hot flashes, for heaven's sakes. But that transitional time in your 40s can be hell. And I mean
Mm,
hell. We see the most suicide cases in women between the ages of 45 and 55, which is perimenopause, when you
right.
lose your
Mhm.
hormones. This is when women are having to leave their jobs, they're getting divorces, they're because of what's happening to their body. And we are not being told about it. We're not being warned about it. Women have no clue that this is what's happened because it creeps up really slowly. And
Right.
they think because they're still having a period that their hormones are the problem. And it's like, actually, we start to lose progesterone in our 30s because
Mm-hmm.
we don't ovulate as often. And when you don't ovulate, you don't produce progesterone. We produce a tiny little bit of the adrenal system, and that's it. It's not enough. It's
Yeah.
not enough to counterbalance all the growth from estrogen that's happening. Progesterone helps with metabolism, helps with insulin sensitivity, helps with sleep. So these little symptoms start to creep up like, oh, you're not sleeping as well. Oh, I've put on 5 pounds. Oh, my period's getting heavier. And what do you do about it? Not much. You might go to your doctor if you're really bleeding out, and he'll offer you birth control pills, a hysterectomy, or an ablation. Those are your choices. Nobody's saying, oh, it's your progesterone. You're losing ovarian function. Here you go. And then in the outside world, for us, in our world, our functional world, naturopaths, functional doctors, they're touting like, oh, seed cycle, and oh, you just take this supplement and you'll be fine. Oh, intermittent fast every single day, and that'll cure all of your problems. You don't need to be doing hormone replacement therapy. Do this, do that. But everybody needs to hear this. You cannot healthy eat, you cannot exercise, you cannot fast, you cannot cold plunge your way out of hormonal loss. It's going to happen.
Right.
All of those things should be part of your health regime. Like they're good things. They're good tools to have, and they're going to help you get through this time. But none of it brings the hormones back. Every single woman on the face of the planet at some point is going to lose her estrogen and progesterone. And for many, they're going to lose their testosterone as well. And then with that, thyroid goes down, oxytocin goes down, like all of these other hormones that depend on our sex hormones start to go down.
Mm-hmm. I
So
think,
yeah.
yeah, I think the point you make is super solid, and we see this in our with our hair wellness products, with women's hormones start to rapidly plummet or fall in their 40s, right? And so, yes, you could do some of the biohacks, you could, maybe eat the right foods for a while, but it's not going to bring you back to your prime levels, not even
No.
close. And so it's the same thing for men, is we want to have the testosterone of a 25-year-old male. If you're 50, yeah, you could eat and lift heavy weights, but it's not going to bring you back to where you were. And then secondly, if you have to optimize everything to have a fighting chance, realistically, how many of us are optimizing everything? We got busy lives, you got parents to take care of, you got kids to take care of, you got your husband or your
Yeah.
wife, you got a family, you got to feed them, you're working. It's hard. I,
Yeah.
I totally understand. The modern world is hard, and that's where we are. So we need to do many things, but also consider hormone replacement therapy. And personally, I was against hormones, 5 years ago, because I was like, oh, you can
Yep.
do anything with your body. But now, as I'm more mature, I go, okay, you could use some help. It's not such a bad deal. So let's come back to the question that I want to ask you, in that there's bioidentical hormones, which you're saying are now extracted from plants, yams in particular, is something you mentioned. And then there were the original hormones, traditional hormones that were being extracted from horses' urine. So
Mhm.
the sense is that for the most part, doctors that are prescribing estrogen or hormone replacement today are using the bioidentical hormones. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Now,
Okay.
some of them are using kind of like the wrong delivery forms, even though they're bioidentical. Then if you're having the wrong delivery form, you could have a lot of issues, and it can increase your risk of certain things. Like I said,
Okay.
like the oral estrogen, if it's bioidentical, it doesn't matter because you're taking it orally,
Mm.
it will increase your risk of heart attack and stroke. And there's a lot of clinics now that are like, oh, it's bioidentical. And there's a big movement right now for oral testosterone for men.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
that's the same thing.
Yeah.
Testosterone and estrogen, when swallowed, is not ideal because it's going through the first hepatic pass of the liver
Mhm.
and causes a cascade of other issues that can start to happen.
Wow. Great point. Okay. So the ideal way to take this would be like a topical patch or a cream on your skin?
Yeah. Yeah. So for each of the hormones, there's kind of what I've seen in my practice working with thousands of women, I see what works best for most people. And that's different. Like some women, they do really, really well on the transdermal creams, testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. Great. There's some women, though, that I've seen that don't absorb it very well. There's some women that really like oral progesterone because oral progesterone creates a lot of these metabolites that help us to sleep and calms anxiety. So some women love that. Other women have a really negative reaction to oral progesterone. Testosterone, we're seeing a lot of, like I said, the oral coming around, a lot of pellet clinics. That's become really popular as testosterone pellets for both men and women, which is the little insertion of these look like rice, and they insert them into your butt fat. And once they're in, you can't get them out. And they last about 3 months. And that we're seeing a lot of problems with too. Some people do well on them, but many people don't do well on them. And if you don't do well, you can't get them out. You're stuck with them for 3 months. And those symptoms, one being hair loss, is huge. When we put in that high of a dose of testosterone and you get this big whammo amount right off the get-go, it starts to get shoved down certain pathways because your body can't metabolize it fast enough.
Right.
And it starts to go down the dihydrotestosterone pathway. And that's where we see, women and men will start to lose their head hair and start growing, having facial hair. Women will start getting whiskers and, like it's not nice. They get coarse hair on their body. They can get clitoral enlargement. Guys can get a lot of acne. Women can get acne as well, oily skin. And so we need to be very careful with some people on how we're using these hormones. And so everybody's different, but health-wise, we definitely want to see like no oral estrogen, no oral testosterone. Oral progesterone seems to be really great for a lot of people. So there's certain, like the little nuances with each of them. We see testosterone injections, for instance, working better than testosterone cream for raising levels. We see estrogen cream and patch working best for raising estrogen levels. We see progesterone cream doing a great job of protecting the uterine lining, but it doesn't show up in blood work. So a lot of doctors think it doesn't work, but it does. Oral progesterone is mostly turned into metabolites. And so we have to make sure we're getting the right amount to protect the uterus from overgrowing. So there's little nuances. And so obviously you want to work with somebody or educate yourself. And some of it is biohacking, you got to just try and see how it goes. And if it doesn't work out, then you switch to an alternative therapy. And I think that that's an important thing for every woman and man to hear, which is there's typically always a way that's going to work, and you just have to find it, because some people have a really bad experience. For instance, they go and do pellets because they hear it's so great, and then they lose their hair and grow a clitoris, and they're like, no, this is not what I wanted. And then they swear off of hormones altogether, or they start estrogen therapy and they get fat. And they're like, I don't like this. Obviously, my breasts are inflamed. I feel like crap. I'm fat. I'm never doing it again. But there's always a way, and there's always a reason too for why those side effects happen that you can mitigate.
And that is why all the nuances you mentioned, I'm going, never thought about that. That's interesting. So, but also at the end, you caveated that it can work for you. You might have to cycle one or two things or change a couple of things.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine. And that's why it's so important for you to work with somebody like Karen, who knows exactly what she's doing, has been working in this field for a long time, has worked with thousands of people, because I don't want to mess around on my own, right? I just want an expert that says, okay, this, according to everything I've heard from you and, your past history or whatever, however your process is, this is the best pathway for you. Well, I'm 90% there already, instead of me guessing and reading YouTube or watching YouTube at 2 a.m. at night to figure this out, or, reading tons of blogs. It's much easier for me to work with somebody who's who's very experienced, especially when it comes to hormones. Like diet and exercise, cool, you can watch YouTube, but this is a little sensitive topic, and you don't want to get any reactions or lose hair,
No.
for example. So, okay, so let me ask you this. I've heard that there's a specific age for women to start getting on these hormone replacement therapies, that closer to menopause seems to be a better age to do this. But what's your perspective? Walk us through 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. What are your thoughts on when women should start and how long they should be on hormone replacement therapy?
So when it comes to hormone replacement therapy, there's a lot of like with that fear around estrogen, we're hearing a lot from doctors and even people that are doing hormone therapy. They're saying things like, don't start estrogen until you don't have a period, because they're still basing it on that, like, oh, estrogen only when needed. But we're seeing the symptoms and the destruction of estrogen loss way before, sometimes years and years prior to the end of our menstruation. And so I don't understand why we're not taking care of that. It's like saying to the man, oh, we're going to wait till actually you don't have any testosterone, and then we're going to give you it. We
Yeah.
would never say that to a guy,
Right.
ever. So why are we saying it to women? Our estrogen is like your testosterone, right? It's our most important hormone. It's what makes us women, is gives us the boobs, the butt, everything, the hips.
Yeah.
And it's like, why are we making women suffer for sometimes 5 years when we could be giving her something? Now, the progesterone, more doctors are on board with starting that in the early days. Like I said before, we stop ovulating as often when we get to our mid 30s to late 30s, early 40s. In that time frame, we just less and less and less produce progesterone. That by the time we're in our 40s, we've lost about 75% of it. And that can start causing a lot of problems. During your 30s, you could probably take some supplements like Vitex and vitamin C and adrenal support that will kind of, it's like it's going to squeeze the last little bit of your progesterone out of your ovaries, and can help. And it can help with all of those symptoms. But on the flip side of that, there's no danger in starting to use that progesterone then when you're starting to lose it. There's no, adverse, like you're not going to be causing any damage. You're not going to stop your body from ovulating. If you're trying to still get pregnant, no, I probably would still use it because it's going to help you get pregnant.
Okay.
And that's actually a number one intervention for women that aren't or are having fertility problems, is using progesterone therapy. But you can, there are things that you can do to help support it and to, not take it during that time. My thoughts are like, let's just go straight to the punch. And if I'm losing my progesterone and I'm suffering because of it, bring it on. It's safe. It's identical to what I usually produce, and it helps immensely. Like I have women that are like, oh my God, could I feel it this quickly, Karen? Like 2 days in on my progesterone, and it's like my PMS is gone. I feel so much better, and my periods are better, and like it can help with libido and weight loss, and it can be really profound. Very quickly too, which we live in a society where we want quick results. So if you're that kind of a person and you don't want to wait 3 months for a supplement to kick in to give you a little tiny bit of relief, you can go straight to progesterone. And it is safe. It's not like, if you start using progesterone, and like the worst thing that's going to happen is you can get depressed. Because it's too much. It's too anti-anxiety. It brings you down too much. So if you're already producing some and you don't need it and you start using it, you'll know fairly quickly, like within a week usually, if you don't need it, because you can put on water retention, you can get depressed, weepy, sad, and then it's like, oh, okay, no, I don't need this yet. So there's your progesterone. Testosterone, we produce about 40%, 45% out of the ovaries, and then the rest is coming from the adrenal system and through conversions of other hormones. So we see some women lose their testosterone early on, and then other women, they don't lose it, and they never do. They actually have pretty healthy amounts all the way through to menopause. If you're starting to lose it, it's typically going to be in your 30s or early 40s, same around that progesterone time as well. And so women will notice like muscle loss, libido can be dropping, their energy can drop, really like just sometimes debilitating fatigue. They lose their umph in life. Like they lose, I always say it's like you lose your lady balls, like your umph to get out there and get stuff done and to be powerful and to, for a businesswoman, testosterone is really important.
Yeah. You need to be a
because you
boss
want to
babe.
be,
Yeah.
you got to be a boss babe.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that's the case, there are, once again, great supplements that can help encourage your body to make that testosterone. And then if you so choose, you can also start testosterone therapy. Now, when you start testosterone therapy, it is one of the hormones that will shut down your own production of it. So if you had really low levels, putting it in, it's not really going to make much of a difference as far as like shutting your own down because you already aren't making any or very little. And so that can be really helpful for some women. But if you are producing lots or a decent amount and you just want a little top up, sometimes starting testosterone therapy isn't a great idea because it can start to shut your own down. So that somebody like that would be better off to try supplements first. Tongkat Ali, maca, DHEA, which is a hormone, but it helps us to make testosterone. And they can work really, really well. That's same with for men. So men, you guys don't lose hormones like we do, but we do start to see deficiency happening typically after the age of 35, and it can start to go down, and it's getting worse. Like your father and your grandfather had much more testosterone than men do today at the same age. Right.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a depletion in men right now of testosterone. But you guys have there's a lot that you can do because your testicles aren't shutting down like our ovaries do. You guys can have babies till the day you die.
Right.
So there's a lot you can do to help boost your own testosterone levels. As you begin to age, it's obviously going to be a lot easier to just take the testosterone therapy, and you're going to really feel that, and it can make you feel a lot better and a lot more youthful. Mental health, heart health, bone health, muscle health, really, really important for men. So you do have to kind of decide like, okay, is it so low that I should just go straight to the testosterone therapy so I can get some relief from my symptoms? Or is it just a little bit low that I can just take some supplements, work out, and, focus on the more functional side of things? So there's that. And then with estrogen. So estrogen, it really starts to deplete at different times and affects women really differently. So for myself, I'm very estrogenic in nature. Genetically, I'm very estrogenic. So when I started to lose my estrogen in my early 40s, I was having every symptom that you could have. Like I was losing my libido, which has a lot to do with your estrogen. I was, my hair was drying out. My face started to sprout new wrinkles by the day, it seemed like, because your estrogen is going to help you make collagen. And so it really affects skin health, really affects hair health. So hot flashing, night sweats, not sleeping, gaining weight, estrogen, the loss of estrogen will cause more weight gain than any other loss of hormones, which most women think estrogen makes us fat, which too much, it will, but too little will make you even fatter.
Okay.
And all in the stomach, right? Because we get more insulin resistant when we lose our estrogen, because estradiol is really important for insulin sensitivity. So we become insulin resistant. We can develop type 2 diabetes. We start getting that visceral fat and metabolic disease. So we want to catch that before it starts to happen. And there are some really good phytoestrogens that you can take in supplements. And that can certainly be your first, intervention. And I did that. I took a great menopause supplement that really, really helped balance my hormones back out, really helped with the hot flashes and night sweats. And I was really happy with it for a while, probably over a year, maybe 2 years. And then I had to start using just a little bit of estradiol just to top up my own because my body was so dependent on it and I was really feeling it. And it just got to that point where I didn't want to have those symptoms creeping up again because they were. So I started using a very low dose and I have been ever since. And I'm 48 now, or turning 48 in the next few months. And I've been on estrogen therapy now for 3 years and I still have a cycle. It's not regular. So it helped to ward off menopause from coming. So my menopause didn't come as fast as it was trying to come. I brought back some of those hormone levels. I started, feeling so much better, started to be able to lose weight, and all of these little naggly symptoms disappeared. And now I know, like I just went through another loss recently where I was like, whew, all my hot flashes and nights started coming back. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to increase my estrogen.
Yeah.
So I did. And so like catching it, the sooner you catch this hormonal loss, the less side effects you're going to have, especially the weight gain. Like the weight gain is what really just destroys so many women. The mood stuff, of course, too, but the weight gain is just so devastating to women. And we have women that, they were 115, 120 pounds their entire life, never once had to think about their weight. And they start to lose their estrogen and they can pack on 20, 40 pounds in a year and just be like, what is happening? And they work out harder, they eat better, and nothing stops it. And they're just ready to lose their mind because they're like, I'm doing everything right and I'm still packing on all this weight. And so somebody like that, if we were able to catch them early and be like, okay, let's try a little bit of estrogen, we'll put you on progesterone, let's see what happens. And then you can intervene and it's safe to do that. It's safe to start them at those ages, even though you're still cycling.
I got you.
And then once we get into menopause, it used to be that we had this 10-year window. And that came from the WHI study too. It was like after 10 years, they started to see an increase in heart attack and stroke, but this was on oral estrogen. So what they've seen now in the research is that actually women can stay on this for as long as they bloody well please. And the Menopause Society actually came out with a new statement last year. They changed it. It used to be the 10-year window. They've changed it and have now stated you can be on hormone replacement therapy for as long as you want.
Wow. Okay. So let me recap real quick. Thank you. You explained that in so much depth and with so much detail. So what I heard you say is that progesterone, you could start maybe early 40s, late 30s, depending on how your levels are. That could be started earlier than estrogen. Testosterone, you want to be careful with because when you start supplementing with it, your body can shut down your endogenous production. So you want to be very careful with it. Try supplement first and then think about maybe a hormone replacement therapy for testosterone. And then with estrogen, right as the symptoms start of perimenopause or the more significant symptoms, even before you hit actual menopause, it's safe to start estrogen then. And as long as you're using bioidentical hormones and then applying them or catering them to yourself, personalizing them in the way that your body prefers them, then it's fine to take them not only short term, but also well into your later years in life.
Correct. You nailed it.
Okay.
You're a good student, Faraz.
Thank you. I'm listening. I'm listening to you, Karen. Okay, so then there's the other, again, this is a joke that women like to share with each other, is that after menopause, they just become little men, right? It's just the hormones kind of stabilize. It's all stable like men are for the most part. There's no ups and downs with the cycles. And so then when you let's say you're 60 or 65 and you want to maintain your womanly hormones, I would assume you're saying it's safe to do that at that age too, and the amounts or progressions, I guess the amounts of the hormones that you take at a later age as opposed to 48 or 45 would be in the relevant range for that age, or how would you measure how much of these to take at 65?
It doesn't change. You take as much as you need to, get rid of your symptoms, but also to preserve your health. So we do see in the research, for instance, women that keep their estradiol levels above 65 picograms per milliliter, which you could only get there with hormone replacement therapy. It's not so much that you're going to be having this period every month. Some women will get a faux bleed, but it's like very light, couple of days, and that's it. But in general, like when we're cycling women, we're above, we can go up to the hundreds, up to 400, 500 at certain times in the cycle, just to give everybody an idea. But the research shows that if at 65 picograms and above, we get bone protection. Right? So it's kind of like saying, well, okay, now you're 65, you're supposed to be in menopause, you're supposed to have no hormones. So we're going to take you off of these, or we're going to lower your dose. And then what? So now I'm going to develop osteoporosis. Possibly I'm going to increase my risk now of cardiovascular disease, dementia, Alzheimer's. It's like, well, why would I do that? Why not keep the hormones in, which are body identical, that keep me and at a reduction of developing these diseases. I mean, we know that women that replace hormones in menopause have a 33% reduction in all-cause mortality. And we see it like across the board for all, reduces your risk of cancer. Every major killer of humans is reduced, some of them dramatically, by using the hormones. And so we're not seeing that, past 10 years, we're not seeing that women start to develop a third arm because they're still on hormones. We're not seeing that. We're seeing that they're being preserved better, that they have better health, that they've got better skin, they've got better hair. And so if we're seeing this and it's being proven to us in the research, it's like, well, why would we go off of them? Because what's the alternative? That we're going to then start statins, and we're going to start having to take insulin because we've developed type 2 diabetes. We're going to have to start taking an antidepressant because we need estrogen to make serotonin, which is an antidepressant. We need our progesterone because it acts as an anti-anxiety. So now what? We're going to start taking Ativan because we're riddled with anxiety, or our poor vagina, it's going to dry right up and shut down because without estrogen, you get no lubrication, and literally it can shut down. I've had women say, nothing's getting in there, Karen. Like the door is closed,
The door is
done
just
for,
locked.
business is closed. Sorry. So it's like,
Your poor husband. All he wants
your
is some
poor
action.
partner.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like that's not nice to do, right? We give men testosterone till the day they die so that they can continue getting a hard on and being sexual. But no, forget it to the women. Like that's not fair to us.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So there's 2 points I'm going to raise with you. One is so yes, any man listening to this who's got a partner or a wife that's, in these 40s or 50s or beyond, men desire sex at every age. They just want it, right? And even though it's a mental game, I get it, but there's also physical functions. You just want to get in the action. And so for men that are listening and they have partners in that age ranges, what is maybe the effective minimum dose, maybe the right hormone mix that they need to kind of encourage their partner to get so that they can get what they want in any decade of life, but they are fulfilled sexually, as are the women, and women aren't. And it's very interesting because it is a mind game after some point. So let's say what you just mentioned, the vagina is locked up, the woman's not going to be open to an initiation of sex by the man.
No.
And the man's going to accept or going to take that as a rejection, and his ego is going to get hurt. That's how men are. Our egos get hurt, and then we don't try again. So how can we help both parties, and what can men do to support their partners into not allowing, but also initiating sex with them, and having more sex with them?
Yeah. And I just think that there's nothing that a man can do when a woman's in that state, which is really, really common.
Yeah.
There's nothing that you're going to do that, like, I had a client who, she came to me in tears and she said, I haven't had sex with my husband in 2 years. We used to have the most amazing sex life. It was really important to us. But the last time we had sex, I had micro tears in my vagina. So it actually tore the skin because the walls of the vagina get so thin and dry that any penetration can actually tear the skin. So this is, I mean, I always make the joke of it once again, if this was a man's problem, would we be dealing with it? If I told you, Faraz, that, okay, Faraz, sorry, but when you're 45, your penis is going to shrivel up. It's going to get really dry. Your skin's going to be so thin that if you tried to penetrate, it's actually going to tear the skin on your penis. Sorry, but that's just age. That's, we'll see you, like, or what if your partner came to you and was like, come on, let's just do it. We got to do it. We're married. Like, are you going to say yes to that? No.
No, I don't want
No.
my skin to tear. No.
No,
I'd want to, but
absolutely
I can't.
not.
Yeah.
Painful, horrible. Plus, you just have no drive for it.
Yeah.
You're miserable. So it's really important for that conversation to happen. I educate my husband all the time about it. And he's like, I'm so glad that you tell me these things. Like,
Right.
Just the need for lubrication, the need for estrogen in the vagina is really, really important for perimenopausal women because it keeps everything lubricated in there. And most women need some sort of help in that area when they're losing their hormones. And so having that conversation with your partner and just educating them like, hey, this is going to happen. Don't take it personally. It's not that you can't get me aroused. It's that hormonally, I don't got the juices anymore. I don't got the tools to make the juices anymore. Sorry, but not going to happen. And so talking to them about it. And then we see a lot of people too that come to us where the women are so fed up. They're doing something about their hormones. They start getting a sex drive, but their partners don't. And so, and they're too ashamed as men to go say, hey, I'm not getting the hard-ons that I used to. I can't ejaculate like I used to. I don't want sex as much. I can just go without it. They have a very hard time asking for help with that. And so a lot of these women, they're like, they get their sex drive back because they start replacing their hormones and they're dragging their partners in. Karen, do you work with men too? Will you work with my husband? Yes, bring them on in. Yep, let's do this.
Nice. Let's
And
fix
then
your
they're
sex
both
life.
on the same page. And it's
Yeah.
really gratifying, and it really like promotes a really strong relationship for a lot of couples in the second half of their life. And it's like, oh, we don't have to say goodbye to sex, and that's really important for all relationships. So not all, but some people can go without it, but for a lot of people is really, really important. And so I think just having that conversation, if you're a guy listening to this and you have a woman suffering, make her listen to the podcast, educate her that, hey, hormones can be a great option. They can work really, really fast. I've had women say like, oh my God, it's been 1 week on estrogen. I actually have this quote on my website. She's like, 1 week on estrogen, I feel the juices coming back alive in my vagina. Like, she was so happy. And her husband was really happy too.
Totally. It's getting some action again. Okay. So Karen, you recently launched some products that help women overcome or get the right dosages or get just some of these hormones inside them so they can live a better, fuller life. Tell us about how you came up with the products. What are these products and how are they helping people?
So in the business that I have, we have really tried to make it a priority to be able to give our services to every walk of life that wants them. It doesn't matter what their financial capabilities are. So we've got group coaching that we help women go through perimenopause and menopause. We do weekly group coaching calls. It's really, really affordable so that they can get the help that they need. And then we've got private programs where it's a lot more money and you're going to work one-on-one with one of our practitioners and you're going to get everything really dialed in, and everything's through prescription, and we can prescribe in every state, but it's pricey. It costs a lot to see physicians and to get these prescriptions, etc. So I wanted to create something that people could afford so they could afford to take hormone replacement therapy without having to go see a physician privately, because it's all private, it's all pay out of pocket. These are hormone specialists. And they can run anywhere from $500 to $1,000 is the typical price just to see them for one session. So it can get very expensive. And then you're paying for hormones on top of that, and you're getting them from a compounding pharmacy or from a pharmacy. And so I wanted to create my own line of hormone creams that women could safely use and experiment with on themselves that were super affordable and available to the masses. Now, unfortunately, only in the United States, they're not available anywhere else, but in the United States, you can legally sell estrogen, progesterone, DHEA, pregnenolone over the counter. So you don't need a prescription for them. So I created Biest, which is a combination of estradiol and another estrogen called estriol. This is used by many practitioners in hormone replacement therapy. I made this one specifically. You can use it systemically, but I made it for the skin. It's a facial cream. It's really, really clean. All my products are clean. They've got no parabens in it, no synthetic smells, which was really important to me too, because what you get at a pharmacy, not sure what's in that, what the basis is. And I would guess that there's lots of parabens and there's other chemicals in there that you probably don't want to be putting on your body every single day for the rest of your life.
Yeah, totally.
Right? So this Biest cream, super clean. And what we've seen in the research is fascinating, like amazing results. So estrogen and estradiol and estriol topically in 6 months has been shown to drastically reduce aging. It shrinks pores by from 60 to 100% in 6 months, which mine 100% did. Like I was getting really enlarged pores. It's something that happens with menopause is we get really start getting all these fine lines, really thin skin, and we start getting enlarged pores. I started using Biest a couple years ago on my face, and sure enough, it shrunk all of my black pores that I was having. Now you can barely see them.
Nice.
It also showed that within 6 months, it increased type 3 collagen in the face and reduced wrinkle depth. So, hello, what woman does not want all 3 of those things, right? Like this is what we're trying so hard to find in facial products is like proof that this can happen. So if you're taking hormones internally, which helps you make collagen and prevent aging, and you put it on topically, it can really help reduce the signs of aging and fairly quickly as well. And so when you use the amount that you use on your face every day, it actually in the research it won't raise systemic levels. And I've seen that in my practice too, because I do so much lab testing. I do lots on myself and I've used it forever. I don't see my estriol changing at all. So I know that, and it's mostly estriol. And so my levels haven't changed. So it shows in the research that it won't raise levels systemically when you're just using it on the face and neck. So if somebody's in their 30s or 40s and they want it as a facial cream, they can use that. And then if you're in menopause, you could use that one systemically. It is in a higher concentrated dose. So that's why I say that for somebody that the person that would use that would have to be in menopause because it'd be too much estrogen. And then I created one of the only estradiol only products that is available online. And it is in a very, very small dose. So it's 0.25 milligrams per pump. And I did this because there wasn't any on the market. And I'm a real big believer that we should be replacing estradiol, not so much estriol, because estriol is a pregnancy hormone. And so a lot of practitioners use this really high dose of estriol and very little estradiol. And we see a lot of problems with that. That's a whole nother episode. But so I wanted to create a really small dosed estradiol that women could use in that perimenopausal phase that we're talking about, where things are starting to go south. The supplements aren't working. You're still having a period, even if it's irregular, and you need that little bit of relief. And so that's just this little tiny top up of estrogen that works really well. So I've got that. And then I did a progesterone cream that's a 50 milligram progesterone cream because that's a really good dose for women that are a little bit farther into perimenopause or in menopause. But if you're in peri, then you can just do half a pump. So, and then that bottle is going to last you a long time because progesterone we cycle. Estrogen we take daily, same with testosterone if we're taking it. But progesterone you always want to cycle. So you want to do, if you're in menopause, 2 weeks on, maybe 3 weeks on, 1 week off, or 2 weeks off. If you're cycling, you want to use it when your body naturally produces it, which is from days 14 to 28 of the cycle, or the last 2 weeks of your cycle. That's when you would use the progesterone cream. And so for right now, I've got those three. I've got some more in the makings and some supplements and stuff, but those are what I've started with. And so far, everybody loves them. I'm getting super great reviews. They're super clean. They absorb really, really well, and they make your skin really nice because of the hormones in them and the ingredients.
That's fantastic. I'm glad you created these and you're helping people. So all three of these are topical creams that you apply on your skin. Would they be applying anywhere on the skin? Would it be just on the face? What's the recommended way to apply these?
Yeah. So the bias is the face. You can use progesterone. It's also been shown to be really good for collagen production. But I prefer using the bias. And the rest, yeah, you want to put them on the inside of your forearm, up the back of your arm, where thin skin is, like your breast tissue, chest. Some will put it on their inner thighs and the more fatty areas, and that'll give it a bit slower of a release. Some women use the biased on their right around their vagina tissue because it can help with lubrication. That's mostly where you would use them, is like those are the best places. And I do actually have a free guidebook on bioidentical hormones, how to use them, but plus a little bit of what we were talking about today, just kind of the history of bioidentical hormones and guidelines for like when you should start them, what are you looking out for symptoms and signs, for estrogen loss, progesterone loss, and I break it all down. I show you some of the studies that have been done on, and link to a bunch of the studies that have been done on bioidentical hormones and hormones in general. And so we can give that out to your audience. So I'll give you the link and you can put it in the show notes and you can give that out. And then also a coupon code to get 10% off of the products. And that'll be Faraz 10.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for doing that, Karen. I appreciate this. I think this is a conversation where I learned a lot. And
Good.
I just assume that things just work out swimmingly well for both genders. But I also recognize menopause is a big, drastic event for a lot of folks, and it causes a lot of problems that you shouldn't have to struggle with or suffer with. So I'm glad you're helping women. You've been helping women for a long time, but now you have some products that can help relieve some of the pain and put women more at ease so they can live their best life, which I hope everybody does. With that said, where can people find you? Give us the website, give us the links, give us your Instagram, your podcast, tell us everything.
Yes. So KarenMartel.com. Karen Martel Hormones on Instagram and Facebook, and the Hormone Solution Podcast, which we just had our 300th episode. We are a top 50 iTunes podcast, over 1 million downloads. So it's doing really well. You've been on there twice, lucky for me. And my audience loves your product, Faraz. I can't tell you how many people in our group, in our private coaching call, like so many of them are taking it because they have had such great success with it. So I really thank you for the products that you're making, because I know that my audience who have suddenly had hair loss, either from testosterone therapy or from just simply aging, have really benefited from them. And we're seeing really good results.
I'm glad to hear, Karen. Glad to hear. Thank you for sharing that. Also, where can people buy the creams that you made?
At KarenMartel.com/shop. And I'll
Okay.
give you that link too, so that it can be in the show notes so people can go straight there.
Awesome. So KarenMartel.com, everything's on there. Go check her out. This woman is dynamic. She knows what she's talking about. She's a close friend now, and I truly appreciate all the knowledge that she brings to the world. So please make sure to check her out. And with that said, Karen, thank you very much for coming on the show again. This is your second time as well.
Yes. Thanks for having me.